Hello and welcome to another episode of the Sunday Surefire podcast. I'm your host, the commish. Joining me today is the co-host, Ethan Weaver.
Kamish, how we doing?
Doing pretty well, Ethan. Doing pretty well. We last week finished up with some off-season winners from the 2025 off-season to this point. So naturally this week, Ethan, what are we talking about this week?
Big losers.
L7 weenies. We are
Weenie.
weenies. We're talking we're talking off-season losers this point from a dynasty standpoint. Players that were in a significantly better position, or at least somewhat better position, when the 2024 season came to a conclusion than they are as of this point in the offseason. This takes into account everything that's happened so far in the offseason, from any type of free agency moves to any trades that went down, and then certainly the NFL draft will played a huge role in reshifting around the dynasty landscape like it does every single year. So these are the guys that came out on the wrong side of it, Ethan. So without any further ado here, my man, just get into it here. Tell me who your first offseason loser was for 2025.
My first offseason loser after the 2025 NFL draft. I'm going to stay home in New England and go with Ramondre Stevenson, a running back I liked over the last couple of years, but unfortunately, I wouldn't say he was nuked in the NFL draft. I would say his dynasty value is nuked, but I do think he is going to be serviceable at times this year. The Patriots are kind of known for using a multi-back system. And I mean, if anybody who's a Patriot fan, I mean, you saw like the James White, LeGarrette Blunt tandem there. So I do think there is a possibility that Ramondre Stevenson does retain some value in terms of like earning your team some points. But in terms of dynasty value, you're not going to get anything for him right now. So you just might as well just hold them. But it's pretty simple. They drafted Travion Henderson, 38th overall in the top of the second round. And with Travion Henderson, I mean, we've all talked at nauseum about these rookies, but Henderson can really do it all. He's slightly undersized to be a workhorse back, which plays into Ramondre Stevenson's role. Can he be the goal line back? Can he be the in between the 20s grinder? Who knows? But what's working against Stevenson is the fact that Henderson is much more explosive. He's a great pass blocker, so he can play on all three downs. And they use significant draft capital on him. So Ramondre Stevenson's going to have to earn his touches. And I do think it's going to ultimately be the Travion Henderson show. But for my Ramondre Stevenson shares, I do hope he retains some value week to week. But Stevenson just kind of had an up and down career thus far. He didn't do much as a rookie. Broke out in his sophomore campaign where he was RB7 in full PPR and RB11 in half point PPR. And in that sophomore campaign where he was an RB1, he predominantly was an RB1 due to his pass catching role. He had 88 targets for 69 receptions, 421 yards, and a touchdown. He only had 210 rushing attempts. And last year, he had 207 rushing attempts in 15 games. So he was on pace to eclipse his rushing totals from the season where he was an RB1. But the biggest difference was he had 88 targets in his sophomore year, and last year he only had 41. And if you look at his career arc in terms of his receiving role, it's gone down every single year. Since I'm not counting his rookie year because he was a fourth round pick. It took him a while to get going, but 88 in that sophomore campaign, 51 targets, and then 41 last year. And now he's arguably in competition with the best talent that he's had in his NFL career. So Ramondre Stevenson, I do think there is a chance he may be serviceable for this year if it can be a 1-2 punch, little thunder and lightning, but his dynasty value has been shot.
Totally agree. He's probably going to factor into a competitive rosters, like a flex spot here and there. Good, decent little depth piece for sure. But like you said, the long term upside for him is completely gone now with Henderson here. Some people might point to the contract extension that Ramondre signed last offseason. On the face of it, it's a 4-year, $36 million extension, which looks all good and everything. But then you dive into the details, which you always have to do with these NFL contracts because you can never take them at face value. If you look at the way that this contract is structured, from here on out. I mean, he's going to be on the team this year, as we know, but beyond 2025, they can cut him going into next season, and they can save $3.4 million against the cap in doing so, and they'd only eat a $3.2 million dead cap hit. And for reference, I mean, you factor in the salary cap going up a little bit next year, it's going to be right around 1% of the salary cap in order to move on from him. So he's in a position now where he has to perform to be on this roster beyond 2025. And if he doesn't, he's going to be gone. And even if he does, honestly, like Henderson is still going to be in the mix here. If anything, it's going to be a situation where he takes on more and more as his career progresses. Kind of like Jahmyr Gibbs, his rookie year was more of an even split with David Montgomery. Into year two, he ate even more into Montgomery's workload. So that's kind of more or less what we're looking at here for Ramondre Stevenson. A guy, maybe you can pop him into your lineup and he can score some points for you, but certainly someone who's as he's getting up into his later 20s is going to be a descending asset for sure. So definitely a loser thus far in the 2025 offseason. I'm going to stick at running back. This is a pretty obvious one based on what happened in the draft too. This is Jerome Ford. Obviously, the Browns selected Quinshawn Junkins in round two. They then doubled down on the running back position in the draft. Went ahead and took Dylan Sampson in round four. So, I mean, at best, at the moment, Ford is kind of uh, looking like he's going to be like in a messy three-man committee where maybe he just as being the veteran in the room, maybe he gets the quote unquote start here and there, but it ultimately ends up he's going to cede a lot of this work to Quinshon Junkins. Ethan doesn't even think Ford's going to be able to get that ceremonial like, oh, you're the veteran, you get to start type thing. And that's on the table. I mean, you don't use a second round pick on a running back if you don't plan on using him. So I'm pretty down on him too. I mean, at his best, Ford was just kind of a quality fill-in player for Nick Chubb. He was certainly like a flex candidate here and there in the past, but I think those days are well behind him here, at least in Cleveland. So like I'm just not all that excited to go ahead and get a guy who, at best case scenario, is going to be in a messy three-way committee for an offense that's projected to be in the the bottom half of the league in scoring this year.
Agree completely. Jerome Ford, I actually didn't think he was that bad last year. Apparently, Cleveland thought otherwise because they double tapped the RB position, and it's not like they went Judkins and I don't know somebody that the community wasn't very high on, or a back that was like okay productive in college. I mean, we're talking about I think SEC Offensive Player of the Year in Dylan Sampson, a guy that put a lot of good tape out there. Yes, he was a fifth round pick, but fifth round capital isn't the end of the world for running backs. And they, like I said, decided to double tap and select two very good running backs, a guy in Judkins, top 40 capital. So Jerome Ford is pretty much dead in Cleveland. He's better off getting cut and finding work elsewhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Ford is a guy who, yeah, he's had his moments filling in. He's done okay in the past. I mean, PFF doesn't love him either. I mean, his highest graded season was RB 32 in his career. So, like you said, he's a guy who's if he might honestly be best served, like you said, getting traded or getting cut this offseason. Hopefully, finding a new home for fantasy purposes. But let's keep it going. Who else you got here? Who else is a big capital loser this offseason?
So a guy that I had a couple shares of, with all the upside in the world, the big size, speed specimen, ex first round pick last year to the Carolina Panthers. And I'm talking Xavier Legette. And the Carolina Panthers told you everything you needed to know about his role as a wide receiver one as they went and drafted Ted McMillan, eighth overall. That is your new alpha in Carolina. And if you just look at Legette's rookie campaign, granted he was raw, I do think he has a chance to carve a role for himself in Carolina. I mean, maybe he moves a little bit to the inside. Tet will get the majority of the coverage, and maybe a year in the NFL he'll be able to develop because he was a raw prospect. But he was outproduced by a late round rookie last year in Jalen Coker. He had all the opportunity in the world to produce last year as a rookie, and that amounted to one top 24 finish. So he, with opportunity, came zero results. The team drafted a receiver in the top 10, and it's like, is he gonna? I mean, is he going to beat out Thielen for targets? Probably not. I mean, he's definitely not going to beat out Ted McMillan for targets. So it'll be interesting to see what role he does carve, if he can be even on the field in two wide receiver sets. I think that would probably be reserved for Thielen and Tet McMillan. So unfortunately for Leggett, there's more target competition, and he's no longer the new shiny first round receiver.
He sure isn't. I mean, like you said, Tet essentially plays the same role of the X on the out there on the perimeter. I mean, he played 66% of his snaps out wide last season, did Xavier Legette, and obviously we know Ted McMillan, big body receiver, going to play a lot on the perimeter as well. You mentioned the interior targets too, going to Adam Thielen. They also, for what it's worth, they also signed Hunter Renfro after a year out of football, who also profiles as more of a slot type receiver too. So, yeah, there's mouths to feed there now in theory. So we'll see if Renfro ends up making the roster or not. But Leggett's going to be, in the mix. They're certainly not going to cut him or anything, but I would say his stock is significantly down based on where it was this time a year ago, where we were kind of projecting him like he could be like a sneaky dark horse here with not a ton of competition, but they've increased the competition around him after a lackluster season. He actually graded out 105 overall per PFF as far as wide receivers go. So not good considering they only graded 133 receivers on the season. So I'm with you on that one too. This next one here is kind of another slam dunk one. I'm gonna mix it up here and go to tight end here. I'm gonna talk Cole Kmet from the Chicago Bears. And look, when the offseason began, I mean, things were kind of looking up for Kmet low key. I mean, they signed Ben Johnson to be their next head coach. So we kind of thinking, I don't know if anyone has said he's going to be his version of Sam Laporta, but you could, in theory, make the argument that, hey, he's the only tight end on this roster. Maybe he can give him a bump and all that. The team also added several offensive linemen to help with protection, and Keenan Allen was headed for free agency. So you very well could have made the argument that he was actually a sleeper candidate when the offseason began, but things have changed since the NFL draft. I mean, they had Colston Loveland as the 10th overall pick. And whenever a team adds a skill player in the top 10, they have plans to get them involved early and often. So they're going to do that with Loveland. They then go ahead and use their second round pick on Luther Burden, just adding further target competition to the mix. Especially Burden, if you think he can be a good short area target, that just kills the tight end position too, as those targets are kind of siphoned to the tight ends as well. Um, Add those two rookies to the mix with guys like DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, who was a top 10 pick a year ago. I don't see much of the target pile left over for Cole Kmet. And going back to Loveland for 1 second here, too. I mean, where he doesn't really necessarily profile as a great blocker at the next level. Kmet actually graded out 23rd out of 73 total tight ends per PFF in terms of run blocking last season. So he might not be this road grader in the running game, but they're going to want to run the ball in Chicago to protect Caleb Williams. And I just think if Kmet's skill set lends itself more to run blocking than a tight end like Loveland, he could very much get pigeonholed into that blocking role. And that's not at all what we want to see for fantasy, Joe. Between that and just the overall number of targets that Caleb Williams has to feed, I'm just really worried about Cole Kmet's value this season and where he's extended long term there. I don't see any way this improves here, at least in the near future.
I agree completely. It's a little unfortunate for Cole Kmet because I do think he is a very good tight end. Ben Johnson must have a plan with Colson Loveland because I think he did have a guy in Kmet that could have been deployed in that Laporta role and been very successful. Kmet reportedly obviously wasn't very happy with the Loveland pick at 10. Ben Johnson came out and essentially said, hey, don't worry, we're going to be running a lot of 12 personnel. You're going to be on the field. It's going to be okay. And I mean, if that is the case, I think it's still, I mean, you're still have so much target competition with Loveland, like you said, DJ Moore, Rome Dunze. Honestly, if they're running 12 personnel, which is one running back, two tight ends. Honestly, I think it helps DJ Moore and Rome Dunze because you just have the two outside wide receivers.
Right.
You don't have Luther Burden or whoever becomes the wide receiver three eating up targets in the middle. But Cole Kmet, unfortunately for him, I think he was, as you were even alluding to, was a guy that was sneakily a good target if you wanted to pair a piece of the Bears offense until they obviously nuked his value when they selected Loveland. But I do think Kmet, there are going to be brighter days ahead when he ultimately leaves Chicago. So he's not a completely dead asset right now, but obviously his value is completely squashed, and you're going to have to be patient with him.
Yeah, a lot of that sounds like coach speak to me, honestly, where we're going to run a lot of 12 personnel. That's great. Okay, well, you have DJ Moore, who's an established NFL player, a good NFL player. You have Roma Odunze, who you just took in the top 10, and now you draft Luther Burden in the top 40, and now you're going to go 12 personnel. all of a sudden out of nowhere. Like I mean, I understand that he was saying that, but it's one of those things where like your actions aren't necessarily adding up to the words that are coming out of your mouth. So that's what I tend to follow. You never know what coaches are going to say this time of year, but to your point about him getting out of there, I mean, I'm looking at his contract right now. He actually is cuttable even going into this year, but looks like he's going to be on the roster for now. They can cut him and save just over $8 million against the cap going into 2026. So if it really doesn't work out, they can do that. He's also young enough and shown enough where he could be a trade candidate as well. So like you said, there could be a get out of jail free card in the form of a trade or a cut a year from now. But for now, we're both in agreement that his stock is definitely down. But who else you got? Who else is a loser this offseason?
A very massive loser, a guy that I think was going to be pretty valuable in any of your leagues this year, especially seasonal redraft leagues. But Najee Harris, running back of the Chargers, unfortunately for him, they bring in a Marion Hampton in the first round, pick 22 overall. And it's not like Hampton, they brought in a guy like Henderson who can be the lightning to Harris's thunder. I mean, they essentially brought in a massive, more explosive, faster, just better all around running back than Najee Harris. So it's just unfortunate for your Najee Harris shares. Fortunately for Harris, it's only he's only on a 1 year deal, so I doubt he comes back um, to LA for the 2026-27 season. But for now in 2025, it's it's definitely thumbs down for Najee Harris, a guy that I thought was going to be got a lot of value, definitely a bump in value when he went to LA, just to kind of be nuked when they drafted a first round running back. Not only a first round running back, but a guy that was the consensus RB2 in the class and would have been the RB1 in many other draft classes. But just unfortunate for Najee Harris. We'll see. We'll see how they split. I do think Najee, unlike Jerome Ford, is going to get the start in week one, and I do think he's going to have a legitimate role. Obviously, up until the point where Hampton's talent starts to rise to the top and kind of relegates Najee to more of a maybe change of pace role. Hey, and maybe that doesn't happen in year one. Maybe Najee keeps Hampton down. I think Hampton's too talented, and I mean he was drafted in the first round for the LA Chargers not to use him. But it'll be interesting to see how the split is come this season.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting split. I think Najee's a guy who is established enough in the league, and even though he's only there on a 1 year deal, is going to take his pound of flesh. I don't think it's very dissimilar to the Ramondre Stevenson situation in a lot of ways, where they draft a rookie early in the draft, but they have the established veteran there too, who's going to take some carries. The thing we know about Najee, he hasn't lived up to the first round pedigree that the Steelers wanted, hence why they declined his 5th year option, hence why he walked into a contract year this offseason, they let him go. But the one thing we know about him, he's kind of like this big battle tank where he can take those hits and he can keep churning out, you know. He's been in the league 4 years. Here's his games played by year. You ready? 17, 17, 17, 17.
17.
Like the guy doesn't get hurt. He doesn't miss time. He's boring. He's not, a great player to watch by any means. Like it's kind of hard watching him, run into the back of an offensive lineman and then fall forward for 2.5 yards. But like that's what he is. He doesn't get hurt. So yes, he is a guy who could fall in the end zone for you and make your fantasy day. That's great. But like you said, he definitely qualifies for this list because Omarion Hampton's a superior athlete, superior running back, and it's only a matter of time before he takes this job by the horn. So if you're holding on to Najee, I think your move is to if you have running back depth and can cut bait with him, I think you hold on to him for right now and you hope in the early part of the season that he is the starter or he's at least getting, something similar to a 40-60 or a 60-40 split, depending on how the reps are distributed early. Maybe he has a big game where he pops in 2 touchdowns and then you look to unload him at that point. So, because right now, like you said, the get out time was when he signed with the Chargers. We talk about buying the dip all the time. That means buying a player low. In this case, you should have sold the bump with him when that little bump came through back in whenever that was, March when free agency hit. So totally agree. Any last points on Najee before I keep going?
No, I do agree that Najee is solidified like NFL running back that does have the pedigree. He's not just going to be kicked to the curb. He's going to have an opportunity, and if he goes out there week 1, week 2, week 3, and shows out and is playing good football, he's not just going to get relegated to the bench. It's just because they drafted a running back in the first round doesn't mean Hampton's going to eventually get 80-90% of the touches. We say it all the time. The league is going to committee approach. I do think Najee and Hampton, for the most part this year, will be a 60-40 split. Maybe, like I said, 60-40, probably Najee to start, or actually probably 70-30 maybe to start. That's going to probably trend to 60-40 Najee, maybe 50-50, and then maybe 60-40 Hampton at the end of the year. But Najee, as you said, he's durable. He's a legit NFL running back with some pedigree. He's gonna have some value in terms of scoring fantasy points this year. A lot of guys that we're talking about on this list, they're not so much completely nuked in terms of scoring fantasy points this year, but it's more so their dynasty value went down the toilet.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree on that one. And I'm going to stick in LA with this one. Actually, same team as well. And I know this one's going to hurt you a little bit because you're a Quentin Johnston believer. You can't quit him. You and I have had many conversations about QJ, so I think he's definitely relevant to bring up here. Former first round pick back in 2023. Had some nice moments in his career, especially last year. Actually caught 8 touchdowns, which is on the surface looks great. But if you dive a little bit further into that,
Don't watch the tape. Don't watch the
don't
tape.
watch the tape. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Ethan knows where I'm going with this. But before we get to that part, I mean, let's just look at receivers who caught at least 8 touchdowns last season. Okay. Only 3 of them finished outside the top 36 in both half PPR and full PPR scoring formats. One of them was Nick Westbrook-Akine, who had the flukiest wide receiver touchdown spree of any player. I played fantasy. I think this is my 16th, 17th year, something like that. I've never seen anything like Nick Westbrook-Akine. Guys catching 2 or 3 passes a week and hitting pay dirt every single week. Unbelievable, good stuff. But yeah, fluky as hell. Then we have Jalen McMillan, who kind of had a hot and cold streak as a rookie. Also missed what essentially amounted to 5 games if we count one of the games he got hurt in the first quarter. So missed some time obviously hurts your overall finish. And then there's QJ, who had no real target competition outside of Lad McConkey, especially on the perimeter. And we all know Lad's going to be the target leader on this team going forward. And if you go back and watch his 10 career touchdowns, which I actually did prior to this episode, I scoured the internet for all these QJ highlights. I saw him. Legitimately, half of them were on busted coverages. Like, I'm talking corners falling down, guys just not running with them. The cornerback squatting because he thinks he has safety help over the top. He doesn't. QJ's running wide open down the sideline. He actually catches the ball and then brings it to the end zone. Also struggled with drops too, but like I said, a minor thing for fantasy, as we say. But the problem is when the team brings in replacements as a result of you dropping the ball or not being in the place and all that, which is what happened with QJ this offseason. Team signs Mike Williams in free agency. They draft Trey Harris in the second round, both of which played the majority of their snaps on the perimeter, which just happens to be where QJ played 88% of his snaps, that being out wide during the 2024 season. So, like I just said earlier, follow what the teams do with their actions, not with their words. So that's what I'm doing here. The team's adding 2 perimeter X wide receivers. Probably doesn't bode well for the X receiver left over. So I just think this new regime here doesn't have any ties to QJ. It's a new GM, it's a new head coach than the regime that took him 2 years ago in round 1. That it's not adding up well for Quentin Johnston heading into 2025.
I needed QJ to work out for me. It just hasn't.
What do you say about hope around here? What's hope around here?
Hope is not a plan.
Hope is not a plan.
And unfortunately, a lot of dynasty managers they follow that strategy. It doesn't bode well for him. But QJ, he's had every opportunity to show out. I watch him play football, and he just doesn't look confident out there. He doesn't catch the ball confidently. He's constantly dropping the ball, and it's just a matter of time before teams just get tired of it. I don't necessarily think Mike Williams and Trey Harris automatically just relegate QJ to the wide receiver 4, even the wide receiver 3. I think it's going to take. I mean, Mike Williams. I mean, he may be complete dust at this point. And Trey Harris, it's not like they brought in a first round receiver. Trey Harris, obviously a lot of people are excited about Harris, but he's not the most locked and loaded prospect. Locked and loaded prospect either. I don't think he's a prospect that just automatically commands starter level snaps right off the rip. I do love Trey Harris's upside in that offense if he can overtake QJ for that number 2 role. But I mean, QJ will have every opportunity in camp through the preseason to lock in the wide receiver 2. Hopefully, he's been able to develop even more um, uh, in year 2. But it's yeah, I do agree. The team's actions aren't giving me the most confidence in QJ. Hopefully, it lights a fire under him, and he can um, be that dominant X receiver that we're hoping for out of TCU. It's not looking like that's ever going to be the case.
Out of
But
what
hey,
school? What school did he go to?
wide receiver U TCU.
Yeah, Texas Christian University. That's WRU, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Ugh.
Everyone coming out of TCU sucks.
Yeah,
Except
there's two schools that I'm okay with helmet scouting on. It's Ohio State. If you go to Ohio State, you're an awesome receiver. The other one's
awesome.
TCU for the exact opposite reason. If you go to TCU, you
Whoa.
suck.
Except for Jack Best. Jack Best is
Well,
going to be
he's
him,
he
dude.
just might be the next guy in the line. We'll see. Don't put the QJ evil on him. Don't put the Josh Doxson receiver juju on him. All Jalen Rager. Don't do it. But yeah, we're in agreement on QJ. Obviously, it's tough. Tough situation. We wanted better for him. Ethan's team wanted better for him. So far, hasn't gotten the better
Yes.
of him because I guarantee you, he was coming off 3 dud weeks, and then those weeks where the corner fell down, you didn't put him in your line because you said you couldn't trust him.
Well, no, hey, just in perfect QJ fashion. Hey, what week did he go off in
Week
this
week
year?
18 was his best week of the whole
Yeah.
season. Yeah,
Best week of
WR2 overall that week. Yeah,
the I'm like, hey,
awesome.
thanks, man. I appreciate it.
And I was being kind. I left those week 18 stats in there when I told you he finished outside the top 36. He would have finished outside the top 40 in both formats if I had thrown that week out. But I'm fair, so I kept all the data in there.
Hey,
But
I
yeah,
appreciate that. I
you're
appreciate
you're
that.
welcome. You're welcome. Did that for you. But keep it rolling. We got two guys left here to cover here. Who else is getting a big L in Ethan Weaver's book so far?
It's gonna kind of fit the theme here. A guy that I think is going to be usable, but a guy that definitely saw his value take a hit, and that's Tyrone Tracy of the New York Giants. Because they didn't just bring a running back in the top of the 4th round pick. I believe it was 105 overall. I mean, third pick in the sorry the third pick in the 4th round, and which is I mean very good capital for a running back. I mean that's a guy that's eventually going to get some opportunity, but it wasn't just some random running back in the 4th round. It was Cam Scatterbo, a guy that the community loves, a guy that can handle a workhorse role, a guy that was just a savage at the college level. It took 3-4 defenders to bring him down. Not only was his contact balance and explosion off the charts, but he was a phenomenal receiver in college. I mean, he had 45 catches last season for 605 yards. He had 21 rushing touchdowns. He had 2,316 all-purpose yards. I mean, Cam Scatterbo was Arizona State, and if Tyrone Tracy can't hold on to the football, he had 5 fumbles last year. His leash is very short. If he goes out there and starts coughing up the football again, it's gonna be Cam Scatterbo season. And like I said, I do think Tyrone Tracy still has a role in this offense, but the constant theme is people are viewing Cam Scatterbo as the eventual starter, and Tyrone Tracy's stock, which was I mean getting pretty not crazy, but it was getting up there at the end of last season. I mean, he
It
was
was
something.
inflated. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of teams were using Tracy to help them win championships, get them into the playoffs. And I mean, for a guy that you most likely got any of the 3rd round or fab, I mean, what a value spike. And then all of a sudden, obviously, he can't hold on to the football that much. Last year, they draft Cam Scatterbo in the 4th round, top of the 4th round, and now Tracy's um, outside looking in dynasty value wise, and a guy that needs to prove he can hold on to the football and be the starter for the New York Giants because Cam Scatterbo is waiting in the wings, ready to pounce.
Totally with you on this. I think it's a great call for Tracy being a loser, even though Scatterbo, I really like Scatterbo. I took him earlier than I probably should have in some leagues because I'm a believer in the talent too. I mean, he's a 4th round pick too, so he's not like locked and loaded either. So you could argue like Tracy shouldn't be on this list. But I think he belongs here too. And for the reasons you mentioned, the fumbling is a big issue. I mean, obviously they didn't draft Scatterboot to not have a role. He's going to have a role for sure. And wouldn't shock me at all if he took over this backfield. But there's also a big long term kind of thing looming around the Giants as well. And that's Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are essentially in like a make or break season. If they don't piece together a quality 2025 campaign, the odds of them both returning beyond 2025 are pretty dim, are pretty slim in my book. And if you look at this, you know how this works, and you've seen it a million times, Ethan. Like you see a regime gets tossed out, and then the fifth round running back from 2 years ago. The new guys don't have any connection to them. They might want to bring in their own guy in free agency. Maybe they draft their own player. Then all of a sudden, Tracy goes from a guy who was helping you in a flex spot score points to 2 years later, he's on the scrap heap because he's not that great. He's like you said, converted wide receiver. It's not like there's a long, massive track record of the guys being sustainable, long-term dynasty assets. I mean, Antonio Gibson was supposed to be that guy, hasn't panned out. There's a million guys with history. Ty Montgomery was another one too, didn't pan out. A bunch of other guys you can name too. So I think Tracy is usable, like you said. You can get some points out of him. He's still on your roster because he's going to be a factor this year. I just think the combination of things between the team adding Scatterboot in the draft. Devin Singletary still sticking around, being a little bit of a thorn in his side as a veteran, kind of like he's been his whole career. And then also the long term picture that I said too. I think he definitely qualifies for this list as well. So with you on that one for sure. And let's just close it out here with the last one here, man. This is a guy who I just referenced him a minute ago here in Jalen McMillan. Did I mention he scored 8 touchdowns last year, but failed to finish as the top 36 wideout? I think I said that.
Yeah, 36. Yes, you did.
Yes, I did. Not a WR3. But like I said, some missed time in their injuries, to be fair, but didn't crack that threshold. But he's another guy that things are kind of looking up for entering the offseason. Godwin was hitting free agency. Obviously, Mike Evans, he was walking into his age 32 season. And you could think like, okay, you kind of see it like Godwin's coming off an injury too. If he comes back, maybe he's going to take a big step here in year two, entering 2025. But they end up retaining Chris Godwin on what amounts to a 2-year guaranteed contract. Evans has also been rumored to be closing in on an extension that will keep him in Tampa Bay. It's likely going to be a 2-year extension. Maybe give him a little bit of a bump this year, lock him in for 26 as well. Just hasn't really shown signs of slowing down significantly. So he's going to be a factor as long as he's on the field. And on top of that, they go ahead in round one and draft Emeka Egbuka out of the Ohio State WR University. That's tough competition right there. And as much as I like McMillan as a player, I think he was a nice value to be had as a guy going late in rookie drafts last year. He might still be that, but just entering this offseason, everyone the talk around him was that he was an ascending asset, a guy that was going to take over in Tampa Bay and be kind of a stalwart of that wide receiver room. Is now faced with a lot of competition and established guys too, in the form of Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and obviously Buka has a strong pedigree as well. Day one capital, all you can ask for if you have an Egbuka manager like I am. But I like the player, don't love the situation. I know that can change, but I think he's definitely taken a little bit of a hit here this offseason. What do you think?
I totally agree. I was never a massive fan of the McMillan hype. I was a proponent of if you did have him, I would. He was a guy I would have been okay with selling for value, considering you didn't spend almost anything to acquire him. So a classic example of you hold on to a player that's not very insulated through the NFL draft, and bad things may happen. In this case, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in my opinion, drafted arguably the safest wide receiver in the NFL draft. I think it's a very, very, very small chance that Egbuka doesn't hit. I think he's going to be a very good receiver. I think he's a massive value at the end of round one in your rookie drafts. I've even seen him go slip in early second, depending on the format.
Scarf him up.
Yeah, exactly. I think Egbuka is going to be great, and with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin still in town, I mean, what are you really going to expect from McMillan? Is he ever going to see your lineup? No. So unfortunately in Dynasty, you have small windows of opportunity. And I get wanting to hold players because it can go the other way too. I know people that got Puka Nacua on Fab, obviously blew up, sold for a second, and now they're kicking themselves. So it can
Tough.
go, yeah, it can go both ways. I guess it just depends what kind of fantasy manager you are. But McMillan was a guy considering Godwin and Evans, in my opinion, were just weren't going to go anywhere. They were going to be there. He was a guy I was okay with taking that risk. And now you just kind of you're kind of left holding the bag with him. I mean, his career's not over. He is obviously a young player, still has an opportunity to be something in this league. We just need to be a little more patient.
Yeah, you have to. You're kind of forced to be patient now because you're not going to get anything
Yeah.
for him. So yeah, sometimes you're better off just taking the found money. You invest a third round pick in him. The guy hits. If you could sell him for a future first last year, great. Maybe like a couple seconds, that would have been found money too. But yeah, easy in hindsight for sure. Tougher in actuality. But sometimes with those later drafted guys, when they do open a little bit of a value window, you're better off selling them. So that's why hits this list for me as well. But that's what we got for you folks. Quick hitting episode where we just run down 8 off-season losers so far to this point in 2025. If you like the show, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button to make sure you're not missing any of our content going forward. And until next time, folks, peace.